Okay.
All right, well, let's get started. There might be a few other folks rolling in. But welcome. My name is Jim Glickman, and we're here today for the presentation, Collecting American Colonials 101, Holding History in Your Hands, colloquially known as Colonials 101. And it's meant for people to get an introduction and to get a kind of a sense of what it's like to collect colonials, but it's also a presentation that is supposed to be fun and engaging for people at all levels of collecting. This is a presentation that originally I drew up with Leo Shane here, sitting here, and we developed this together, and we've given it together. So I'm glad Leo's here to give me a hard time. But welcome. So this session is being recorded. So for folks that aren't here, this is going to be shortly after the C4 convention. This recorded session, as well as the other recorded sessions from last night, and tomorrow's session with Ray Williams on collecting colonial currency will all be put as videos on our C4 website, colonialcoins.org. So we're here to talk about kind of an intro to collecting colonial coins, why you do it, what it's all about, what gets us colonial folks so excited about this part of the hobby. Well, Leo and I think of it, and I think most of us who collect colonials think of it as holding history in your hands. You're collecting, nothing wrong with Morgans or Mercury dimes, but we really value and treasure the historical importance of every object that we look at, that we collect. And so we're going to talk a lot about the different types of things that we get excited about. But first of all, we have just a little teaser here. This is one of Leo's favorite coins. It's 1787 Fugio cent, designed by Ben Franklin himself, and thought to be the first coin, or one of the first coins, if not the first coin, depending on how you see the Continental Dollar, issued and authorized by the American government, the Continental Congress. And you see the 13 rings in the reverse, symbolizing the 13 colonies. So, and mind your business, the iconography of time flying, so a lot of meaning there, and a lot of contemporary meaning there at that time. So the first question that we address when we're talking about collecting colonial coins are, well, what do we even mean about colonials? What are colonials? What does that term mean? And so people ask questions about them. When were they made? What are they? What's included? What's not included? And so first people often ask, well, when were they made? Are we talking about, what period are we talking about? Are we talking about way back, from the 1500s when North America, explorers first came to North America? Are we talking about, well, at least white explorers from, European explorers from Europe? Are we talking about all the way to 1776? We have in the 1500s, we have meant at Mexico City opening. So is that when colonial starts? Are we going back that far? Are we going way up to when the Constitution was drawn up in 1787? Are we going right up to when the U.S. Mint, the first federal mint, was at least the authorizing legislation was passed in 1792? Are we going up to that period? Sometimes people collect Washingtonia, things that have to do with medals and so forth, have to do with George Washington's presidency, and that extends even beyond 1792. Are we talking, and even to his death and beyond, like Washington funeral medals? Are those colonials? Other questions? I'm sorry. As far as when, we have some things pictured here. We have a 1729 Spanish pistarini. So one of the many types of coins minted in Latin America, Mexico or Latin America, or South America, and are those included? We have the Fugio cent we saw a picture of earlier. We have some colonial currency here. So don't forget, colonial enthusiasts don't only get excited about coins, they get excited about paper money as well. So we really want to not forget about the paper money, include that as well. So here's a beautiful piece of 1777 continental currency authorized by the Continental Congress. So which of these are included or excluded? What time period are we talking about? Another set of questions, well, where are colonials made? Are we talking about only things that are minted and printed right here in North America, right here in the 13 colonies? Some people focus on that, but is that all we're talking about? Are we talking about things that, coins that were authorized by the mother country, by Great Britain, and also other countries such as France, for circulation in this country? Is that included in American colonials? Or colonials that we collect here in America? Are we talking about coins that circulated in the colonies? Anything that circulated in the colonies at that time, is that fair game for what we collect? Are we talking about things that are authorized by official governmental entities? Are we talking about things that are counterfeited? Are we talking about private issues, things that were speculative issues that were issued to try to make as a business venture, with often a shortage of circulating coins? Are they included? So here are some interesting items that were minted in a variety of places. Of course, we have coins minted in the colonies. We have here a piece of paper, 1771 North Carolina 10 shilling piece, obviously minted right here in the colonies. But we have some Spanish silver here. We have what appears to be an 8 real coin from 1686. You see the 86 there, which is how you know the date. A cob made in Bolivia. We have counterfeits made in England that were shipped here in large quantities. We have, are they counted? We have Nova, in the bottom right, Nova Constellati, a very popular item that's collected. We're not even sure where that was minted. There are some people, I think most people think it was minted in England, the Birmingham Mint. In the past, there have been people that, and maybe there are still a few that think, oh, that was definitely minted here in the United States somewhere. Unclear, but that's a privately minted issue, probably not minted in the 13 colonies. Is that a colonial or not? So, here are all the places that I think could be, in theory, included in what is a colonial. Of course, I think we all agree the easiest are things that were minted or printed in the 13 colonies. But you expand out, we have Vermont. Well, Vermont wasn't one of the 13 colonies. It wanted very much to be the 14th state, as it advertised on the reverse legend of the landscapes. And it was eventually the 14th state, I think in 1791. But in the period we think of where many of these items were printed and minted, Vermont was a republic. It wasn't one of the 13 colonies. So how is that included? We have coins, many coins that circulated, we know, from various evidence, from almanacs that were printed at the time, from ground finds. We know what circulated. We know that many things that circulated were not minted here. They were minted in England and brought over in people's pockets, and various commercial transactions from Great Britain, from France, from Spain and its colonies. Certainly Portugal, Brazil, Germany, many places, and probably others, coins have been found here from even the Middle East from that time. So coins from many parts of the world circulated here. Are we interested in what circulated here at that time or what was minted here at that time? So I think the answer that most any of the folks that collect colonials, and by colonials I want to emphasize coins and currency, would say all of the above, and there's no reason to exclude any subset that I've talked about. All of these things, they either were made here, they circulated here, they were part of colonial life, they were part of the colonial economy here. So I think any one of these is fair game for something to focus on as part of a colonial collection, and makes you, if you collect it, makes you a colonial collector. And I'm constantly amazed at the breadth of what we all collect, of meeting people and asking, well, what do you collect? What are you interested in? And hearing so many different types of answers. Leo here collects, for example, foreign coins, among other things, foreign coins that circulated here, that period almanacs would list their values. So we know they circulated, and we know that merchants and consumers at the time had to figure out how one related to the other monetarily, what kind of exchange rate there was. So that's a creative and I think a fantastic way to collect. And it just shows that there's so many ways. Some people focus on Spanish silver. There's a whole world that you can get lost in of just paper money as opposed to coins. But there are coins that were made here, coins that were private issues that were made to circulate here, coins that weren't necessarily designed to circulate here but did circulate here, and any combination of those is I think what we all collect as colonial collectors. And by the way, I forgot to mention at the outset, feel free to ask questions as we go along, or at the end there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions as well. The next question I think that people ask and that I'm going to cover is, well, why should I collect colonials? Part of the answer I've already alluded to in kind of talking about the breadth of the material that really is included in the colonial sphere. You're really literally holding history in your hands. I think most colonial collectors think in a way that just isn't true with other items, or at least isn't true to that extent. So just to illustrate this point about you're holding history in your hands, a few questions that we're going to ask, and we'll give the answers in a second. But see if you know the answer to any of these. So, what coin was minted in Maryland? Right here in Maryland. We're here in Baltimore. What is Paul Revere's connection to colonial currency? We know he did a lot of things, but what connection did he have to colonial currency? What coin was authorized by the American Congress but minted privately? Okay. What coins were used in day-to-day commerce? I'm sorry. What were the coins that were used most often in day-to-day commerce? Were counterfeit coins and currency, were they endemic? Were they a problem in the colonial economy? So here are some answers, and some of these you might have already known, but the Chalmers token, collected by some, kind of hard to collect because there are not a lot of them. You'll see on the bourse floor. But right here in Maryland, Chalmers tokens. Paul Revere's connection to colonial currency. Some of you may know this, but the Paul Revere engraved the plates for the front of the codfish notes, which are a very well-known and well-sought-after type of Massachusetts currency. So when you talk about colonial currency, we're talking about issues authorized and printed by the Continental Congress, as well as each of the 13 states had their own. So there's really lots of areas to go into there. But the Massachusetts currency included the codfish notes and the rising sun notes, both very famous and sought after in those areas. And yes, Paul Revere engraved those plates. What coins authorized by the American Congress but minted privately? Fuji, we talked about it earlier. Fujio coppers. Men, have a seat. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. So the Fujios that we saw before, Leo's favorite coin, authorized by the Continental Congress. But they were, rather than set up a mint themselves, they contracted out. They contracted out the actual minting of the coins. What coins were most used in day-to-day commerce? I would say Spanish silver and counterfeit British halfpence. Those are the two leading candidates. Maybe Spanish silver might have the edge, but certainly those two were the most common things you'd find in people's pockets in day-to-day commerce in the colonies. And yes, counterfeit coins and currency, big problem. The British purposely, from ships, counterfeited some of the colonial currency, and British counterfeit halfpence came over, and farthings came over in large quantities, causing all kinds of problems for merchants and consumers alike. Well, now that we've talked about what's a colonial and why should I be interested in colonials, what historically about it is so interesting, so you decided, well, let me look into colonials. Maybe I should start thinking about collecting them, or at least exploring collecting them. What should I collect? Well, great question, and there's so many ways to go about it. So before I talk about how there's there's so many different areas that are covered by colonials, and so many collectors have their own areas they collect in. Likewise, there are so many ways to collect. So one popular way is the so-called state issues. So New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and it wasn't one of the 13 states, but the Republic of Vermont, those 4 states or colonies either minted their own coins. In Massachusetts' case, set up its own state-owned mint, or privately contracted out others to have the right to and the obligation to make a certain amount of coins. Those 4 are some of the most popular ways to collect colonials, and probably if you look at what areas have the most collectors, these 4 areas probably have the most collectors, along with probably maybe mass silver, and maybe Fujios. But these 4 are very popular. So just starting out, you may want to get one from each of these 4 states, or so you may want to come up just with a type coin, a New Jersey copper, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont, right? You may want to get one from each state with a date. So, for example, in Vermont, you have 1785, 86, 87. You have those 4 dates that Vermont coppers were minted, and you have coppers with those 4 dates. So you could get a date set of 4, okay? And the same with 1787 and 1788, 2 years for Massachusetts coppers. You may want to get a little fancy and get 2 Massachusetts cents and 2 Massachusetts half cents at each date. Well, that's 4 coins. But so you see how you start simple, and you could, if you're enjoying it and you want to learn more, and the kind of the bug bites you, you could expand out. You could get one of each major type from each of the states. You can open the Red Book and get many people want to get a Red Book type set. And I think it's a fantastic way to collect. Some people stop there. Many people, it's kind of a joke among collectors that people say, oh, I'm just going to get a type set, or I'm just going to do one from each day. That's all I'm going to do. And then you check back with them a few years later, and they're up to their neck in it. They become variety collectors, which we'll get into in a second. But actually, it's the next one. So some people start off with just a type or a Red Book, and they say, be it New Jersey's or Vermont's or Mass or Connecticut, they get so involved in it, and they buy the book, and they meet other collectors, and they start talking, and they realize how fun it is, and they say, I'm going to go to the next level, which is to collect varieties. Now, sometimes that means over 100 coins, like with New Jersey's. Now, very few people are going to collect over 100 New Jerseys, because after a while they get rarer and rarer and harder to obtain. But many people start off with just a typeset of New Jerseys, for example, and before you know it, they have 50 New Jerseys or more. I'm one of those people. And Vermont's, there are, I think, 39 varieties. So you start off small, and then as your interest, if your interest goes deeper, you can migrate up. Some people, like with a Fugio set, you can get one Fugio set. Or you can there's some like Red Book types, so you can go deeper. Any one of these you can go deeper. Now, paper currency is interesting because many people start off with wanting to get one example from each of the 13 colonies, and then maybe one issued by the Continental Congress, 14 pieces. That's a fine way to start. Many people do that, and some people and one of them go way beyond that. So it's a hobby. It's all about fun. It's all what is interesting to you. If you find something that, and I've done this, if you find an area where you just want to have one, but it doesn't strike your fancy enough to really go deep, well, that's fine too. So for example, I have one Virginia copper. Virginia coppers were authorized and minted in Great Britain and shipped over here. It's a fantastic coin, but I didn't feel like going to the next step. So it's really all about where your interests lie. So again, illustrating what I've been saying, here's an example of collecting Vermont coppers, a nice introductory way to collect. You might want to get a landscape. Many people love the landscapes and start off with one. And then they say, well, I may want to get just one of the other types. So there's the iconic baby head type. It's only one variety, and it looks unlike the others. And there's a lot of speculation about who engraved the baby head and why, and why does it look like that. We don't know, which adds to its fascination. Then there are bust left and bust right examples, and you can get one of each. There's a kind of a mule with a British halfpence called that's a 1788 Georgius Rex on it. So that's kind of a mule. That's a Vermont. It has a Vermont reverse. So that's an interesting way to do it. There's one that there's actually more than one variety where on the back, rather than the inscription being Indi et Lib, which is Latin for independence and liberty, it's reversed. Et lib Indi. So that's another kind of major type. So this is an example, just using Vermont coppers as an example of how you can expand from, well, I just want one Vermont copper just to get a type, to, gee, I want, a typeset of Vermont coppers. And here's, we talked about colonial currency before. Here's an example of, a partial example, I should say, of trying to get one from each of the 13 colonies. So we have a New Jersey, a Rhode Island, a South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York. So these are an example of a partial 13 colony set, and I find it completely fascinating because a little bit different mottos, and you really see what's going on in the thinking process in each of the 13 colonies. Sometimes there are famous signers. There's lots to explore, and you may be satisfied with just getting a 13 note set, or you may want to dive right in and do more. And I should say, with regard to with paper money, there's so many ways to collect. Some people collect by famous signers. Some of the signers are people that may have signed the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution or the Articles of Confederation. So some people look for that, and other people that have historical significance. Some people want to get one of each emission. So with colonial currency, for example, with the Continental Congress, they had authorizing legislation issuing, so much worth of bills on this date. That's called an emission. And so some people want to get one bill from each of those emissions. You know which emission it is by the date on it. So there are ways to collect, and then there are sub-ways, and then deeper and deeper if you choose to do that. How rare are colonials? It's interesting. There are coins that people collect in the non-colonial sphere that are fairly rare. The 1909 SVDB. You're not going to see that as often as many other Lincoln cents. But you're going to see a lot more of those than you will see of colonial. So in the colonial world, we use this rarity system where R1 up to R9. R9 being unique, R1 being more than 1,250 known. And most colonials fall in the middle, but you can see from the chart here that R4 would be 76 to 200 known. That's from there, between there and R1. So R1s, R2s are fairly plentiful. When I say plentiful, I mean in perspective. plentiful that you can, without much effort, you can, go to on the Bourse floor at a coin show, you can find one, or on a website. R4 is a little tougher, 76 to 200, but in that range, R1 to R4, that's, most colonial collectors will be able to find one. It won't be an incredible challenge. Once you get above there, R5 is only 31 to 75. So if it's an area that's popular, like New Jersey or coppers or Vermont coppers, it might be a little bit tough to find an R5 because you might think, well, it could be as many as 50 or 60 or even 70. But if you have a large number of collectors, relatively speaking, I should say, in that area, well, it's not going to be, you're not going to immediately find an R5. You might find it right away if you're lucky, but certainly it's going to be more of a challenge. R6, R7, you're talking about very tough to find. But the good news is that, in most of these series, you have plenty of wonderful varieties to collect, even in the R1 to R4 area. Which leads to rarity, leads logically to our next topic, which is, are colonials expensive? Well, yes and no. And first of all, expensive is a kind of a squishy word. It's a relative word. What's expensive to one person may not seem so expensive to another, depending on your budget. But colonials, both paper money and colonial coins, you can find plenty of really interesting items here we have, for example, a 1787 colonial copper. You see the legends, you see the devices, you see all the detail that pretty much you need to know to get a sense of what the coin is. It's a fine coin, it's $100, or maybe a little nicer one, $200. We have we talked about it before, the codfish currency that was, here's something that was printed by, the plates were done by Paul Revere. So very collectible, very interesting. Here $1,000, a little more, something that's not in maybe some people's budgets. Of course, you can have a continental dollar that, other very, very rare coins that can be in the 5 figures and even 6 figures. So there's like anything in many areas of collecting, there's a range. I have found over the years that I have been able to find many, many very interesting things to collect. Many under 1,000, and many under 500. For a few hundred, or 300 or 400, I've always been successful at a show, including just this show, in finding very interesting items that I'm happy to have in my collection without spending large amounts of money. So, quick break, hold history in your hands. Another example of this is now one of my favorite coins. This is a 1787 Nova Iborak. Nova Iborak is Latin for New York. We think we know who minted it. We have an idea of where. We don't know exactly. We don't have exact, direct evidence. We think a man named John Bailey, along with Ephraim Brazier, minted these, and we think of a mint in New York City, and there's been some research done, and we think we even know maybe where in New York City, but we don't absolutely know, and that makes us very excited. We don't exactly know, how many were minted. The state of New York decided after initially thinking about issuing its own state coinage, like Mass and Connecticut and New Jersey had done, decided, no, we're not going to do that. So somebody, we think we know, went off themselves and privately minted these coins. And they come in decent enough quantity that you can find them at coin shows, and they are often well circulated, so they certainly were part of the economy, part of commerce, but it's a very interesting coin, and so that's one of my favorites. All right, back to the talk. So, what books are available on colonials? So, of course, you all know the saying, or many of you know the saying, buy the book before the coin. I sometimes think of it as, buy a couple of inexpensive coins, get interested. If you're still interested, buy the book, and then really start buying coins. So I think it's coin, book, coin. But, we don't have a handout here, but if you go on the C4 website, www.colonialcoins.org, and you kind of, I can't remember exactly where on the site now, but if you kind of noodle around a little bit, you'll find that there's a suggested list of some basic books that you might want to think about getting to start reading, to start learning more. Because what happens is the more you learn, if this is for you, if this corner of the hobby is for you, then once you start reading a little bit, you start asking questions and wanting to know more. And then you need to buy some books and you read the books and you want to know even more, and it kind of feeds on itself. So, for example, you may want to think about some general books. So, of course, the first part of the Red Book, that's a great place to get general information on colonials. And then there's Whitman's Encyclopedia, which is a wonderful place where almost all the major series are photographed. Each variety is photographed. There's suggested prices in there. That's a great resource. And that's available from any numismatic book dealer, or I'm sure you can get it on Amazon as well. There are other general books like Will Nebrook, who's sitting right here. His wonderful book that I've read, In Yankee Doodle's Pocket. And Phil Mossman wrote a book called Money in the American Colonies, or something like that. So there's some wonderful kind of general books. And then if you're really interested in an area, you want to think about getting the reference book if it exists for that area. So for example, if you want to collect New Jersey coppers, great series to collect. You see here on the slide in the bottom right, Roger Soboni and two other people, Buell Ish and Jack Howes, wrote a wonderful book. I think it came out in 2013. That is the reference. It's once you decide you want to go for New Jersey's, that's the book to get. It's wonderful. Tony Carlotto wrote a book for Vermont copper collectors of Vermont coppers. I love that book. So that's kind of the next level. By the way, I'll put a plug for C4. We'll talk about C4 later, but C4, which I'm a member of, the Colonial Coin Collectors Club. If you're really thinking you want to collect colonials, that's a great club to join. And one of the many reasons, aside from the newsletter and our wonderful convention and meeting other collectors, which for me, and talking to them, completely advanced my sophistication and I don't know where I'd be collecting-wise if I hadn't met the people I've met in C4 and be able to learn from them. But one of the things they do is we have a lending library, excuse me. Leo Shane here is our librarian. So let's say you are thinking about, hey, I want to collect Vermont coppers. I think I might want to get that Carlotto book, but I don't want to spend the money on it. I want to be sure. Well, you can borrow the book from the lending library. You contact Leo. Leo mails it out to you. You have it for a certain time. You mail it back to him. And that way you can look at it, thumb through it, and say, hey, I do want this book, or this is not for me. But so that's a great reason to join C4. But I think what you want to do is thinking about when you're getting more involved in collecting, really in any area, you got to think about building a colonial library, building a reference library. What books do I want to have at my fingertips to be able to thumb through? Certainly the reference work. Another example is Connecticut Coppers. Reference work just came out this year, 2021, written by Randy Clark, a tremendous work. And there are certain basic works like that, and I mentioned the Whitman Encyclopedia, that you want to have, I think, at your fingertips, because you're going to use it often enough. This is a whole other kind of world, a whole other, I could talk for a long time just on how do I grade colonials. So, we know about, grading, let's say, U.S. silver coins, or EAC has kind of its own system for grading coppers, and it's a good system. But when you talk about grading colonials, it's a little bit different and it's a little bit more complicated. I think that's a good thing because it's a little bit of a challenge, and if it's too easy, to me, to my way of thinking, if it's too easy, if it's looking about, is the Liberty on the band there, can you see more than half of the letters? I don't know if there's anything wrong with that, but it's not as much of a challenge as I think trying to grade a colonial coin. Part of that is because colonial coins were made with cruder technology than was made by the U.S. government. So you may have coins that the stripe didn't come through well. A certain variety, maybe the way they were made, the upper reverse just doesn't come struck well. or the center, maybe many of them are a later die state. We'll talk about die states a little later, and maybe that the center just doesn't come with a lot of detail, even in coins of very high grade. But to someone who doesn't really know, it looks like, oh, this coin has a lot of wear. Wow, I can't even read the letters. And look at, on the figure of liberty, a lot of the details missing. It must be a worn coin. So it's one of these where you really, the more you know, the more that you're going to be able to effectively assess the coin's grade. Plus, with the crudity of the planches that we use and other problems with the minting technology, you're going to have coins that have maybe things called planchet fissures. Maybe there were impurities in the copper. As the copper was rolled out, you may have little fissures, little areas that little breaks in it, and that isn't. It may look like, oh, this coin was damaged. Well, the coin wasn't damaged. That's how the coin was made. There are certainly a lot of colonial coins with damage, but after you get to know the colonials, especially in the area that you're collecting in, you'll be able to see, and it's actually a very, very satisfying feeling. When you see that, wow, I'm getting more sophisticated, I'm understanding better, that's part of the fun, just that feeling of achievement to say, wait a minute, I know that this looks like something that was minted this way versus, I think this was post-strike damage. So that's part of it. So typically in C4s, typically in the world of colonials, unlike EAC grading, which kind of gives you a net grade, pretty much there's a straight grade but with comments. Some people you'll see every once in a while people grading colonial coins in the EAC method and giving a net grade, but most people will give a straight details grade and will give comments like maybe there's some edge bumps, or there's a scratch or something. That would be noted. That certainly goes to value, but it doesn't necessarily, at least in my view, take away from the details grade, from the technical grade. But I think one thing that helped me a lot, and I always tell people is, as it says here, look at catalogs, because the catalogs, that's how the pros saw it. So, get your hands on some major catalogs, maybe the ones at this show, or try to find some older ones, especially in the area you're interested in. If you're interested in Vermont, try to find a catalog, or New Jersey's. Try to find a catalog with lots of New Jerseys. And then look at, well, what did the cataloger, because they have a lot of expertise, what did they call, why did they call this coin a VF20, but it looks to me more worn, why is that, or vice versa. So you see how coins were graded. You don't necessarily have to agree with that grade. In fact, people that are extremely sophisticated don't always agree on the grade, and you don't often hear colonial enthusiasts kind of argue over what grade it is. Grade isn't something that is foremost on their mind. I think they look at the coin as a whole and they see the condition and what the presence or absence of detracting features. One thing I wanted to, so for example, we look at such things as I mentioned planchet fissures before, but planchet quality. Was the die so swollen from repeated use that maybe a lot of details missing? With some people that could be a positive, because if they're collecting by die state, they want to collect by each progression of the die, and they may have several examples of a single variety. This is really advanced type collecting, because they want to see how the different coins look. The coin tells the story exactly of what condition the die was in, so people kind of get into that. And so sometimes die swelling is not a bad thing, but it depends on what you're looking for. But you really have to learn, really learn your niche, your part of what you're collecting. And there's no, either be it online or in catalogs, or the best is to come to coin shows and see it in person. There's no substitute for seeing as many coins as possible. I think that's one of the big takeaways here. Look at as many coins as possible. Get to know how do they look, how do they come. You may see a coin that at first you would thought, well, this doesn't look very good, but you may come to learn that, wow, that's a fantastic example of that type of coin, of that variety, or that sub-variety. And then you only learn that by, you can't do that without seeing many, many coins. The more coins, the better. The other thing I want to say about grading is that one of the things I think is very helpful that we didn't have until, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago is we have a chapter in the EAC grading guide that just dedicated toward grading colonial coins. So the EAC guide is called Grading Guide for Early American Copper Coins. It is a great book. If you can find it, I definitely recommend it. And chapter 4 in that was written by our own Ray Williams, sitting right here, and it's fantastic. He goes through the most popular type of colonial coins, you know, the state issues, Fujios, and he gives pictorial examples of one in each grade, and that's a great starting point. So I highly recommend that. So here's some examples of things that you have to contend with when trying to assess the grade and by extension, the value and really the desirability of a certain colonial coin. So here's one with a plancher cutter mark, which means that the plancher cutter, they kind of probably made a mistake and it came down where it wasn't supposed to, so you have a plancher cutter mark. You may have a weak date. The weak date may be something that you can find a better one. If you know that coin, you may think, you know, I can find one with the date showing. Or it may be that, oh, you know, if you see enough or you talk to someone who's much more experienced in that area, they may say, oh, the date never shows, like a Vermont Rider 26. Oh, the date never shows up on that one. So that's a whole different story. Verdigris, you see the green. That's something that's present on some colonial coins to look out for, and it's something you want to assess when you assess the desirability of the coin. Many colonial coins have a clip. The plancher cutter, when they were cutting out, you know, the planchets, you know, they were at the end maybe. That's you see straight and round clips. Some people like them, some people don't. Tips for buying colonials. I can't emphasize enough. Try to get some basic level of knowledge before making any major purchase, before making any substantial purchase. So I see no problem with, you know, you're excited, you know, you buy something low grade, something that isn't worth a lot of money, or I should say the price of it isn't that much. You're not investing a lot of money just because it's exciting and you get a sense that you can hold it in your hand and it's a starting point. Nothing wrong with that, but before you really start making substantial purchases with your you know, and spending down your coin budget, you want to really start to become knowledgeable. You want to see, as I said before, you want to see as many examples as you can, or at least see a number of examples to get a sense of, well, how do these coins come? Maybe they come much better than the one offered by this dealer or on this website, and I should wait, and I can do much better. You don't want to jump into something and then say to yourself, you know, I really should have been a little more patient. I should have waited. So I think it's better to start off, maybe buy a few because you're excited. Start reading either, you know, on borrowing books or buying books, or even in the Red Book. Get a start and try to get as much knowledge as you can to get a sense of what these coins are about, whether you like them enough to really start putting some money into them, and how they come. Be patient. The right coin will come to you rather than thinking you have to buy something right away. So keep that in mind. I also think it's important, especially when you're starting off, seek out kind of established, well-known dealers in colonial coins, and you'll get a sense of who they are. You know, for example, another reason to join C4, because that's another way to easily learn, well, who are the folks that are the most prominent dealers in colonial coins. Because I think that's a good way to start, not just because there are counterfeits, but but for a lot of reasons. I think a dealer who's a full-time colonial dealer or a respected and established dealer will have fair prices for the most part, and prices that make sense for the coin. I would say over time, get to know the dealers. They have different styles. Some, they have a price, and like in any area of numismatics, they have their price, and they're not going to budge from that price. Well, that's fine. That's how they do business. Some colonial dealers, they'll put a price, but maybe there's a little bit of there's a little bit of give there. So you'll get to know that over time. But again, wait for the right coin to come to you, exercise a little patience, and I would say, we talked about grade a few minutes ago, don't get hung up on grade. So if either the slab or the dealer's envelope says VF20, right, and you've done a little bit of looking in catalogs, and maybe you even have the grading guide I talked about, you looked at chapter 4 that Ray wrote, and no, this can't be a VF20, this is a VF15. My advice would be, don't get too hung up on that. If the price of the coin is $450 and you think that's a reasonable price for that coin, it doesn't really matter. You can haggle all day over the price. Don't even worry about it. Just think more about what's the coin value, what's the coin's overall desirability. I like to think about, is this a coin that when I take it out from its envelope a year from now, 2 years from now, or more, is this a coin I'm still going to be happy with? So I try to think about kind of longer term, and a coin's desirability to me, not just today, but as I go forward. Where can I find colonials? Certainly, the dealers are listed in the C4 newsletter. Again, a plug to join C4. I think it's $30 a year, and it is to me a fantastic bargain. The newsletter is great, and you just learn a lot just from getting a sense of how do other colonial collectors think. What do they value? What's their perspective? That's great. But so colonial dealers are listed in the C4 newsletter. You'll see them at certainly at any major show, or even small regional shows. You'll see dealers usually, unless it's a very small show, you'll see a dealer that has colonial inventory. And there's a C4 auction that Stack's Bowers holds. That's a great place to find colonials. And you may want to look at those. Usually there's the internet-only site where sometimes less expensive colonials, and that's a great place for a beginner to be. Certainly websites. Some folks have websites. I would say eBay, but caveat emptor. Be really careful about eBay, especially if you're a beginner. That's a place where you easily buy the wrong coin. So you want to. I'm not saying don't buy on eBay. I'm saying before you do, really know what you're buying first and be very careful. Maybe even get someone's if you made some connections with other people that collect colonials, get a second opinion. What about certified colonials? So the basic message here is there's no right or wrong answer. There are pros and cons to each. Some prefer slabs, and some don't. A lot of the colonial collectors that have been collecting for a long time don't like slabs, and so I'll just give you quick pros and cons for each. If a coin's in a slab, you can't see the edge, which is sometimes very important. You can't weigh it. So-called metrology. You can't measure the diameter, the weight, the things that at least more advanced collectors want to do with these coins. Plus, you want to get right up to it, and you want to be able to look at it. And the plastic kind of, I think, comes between that. On the other hand, a lot of people like slabs for resale value and other reasons. So there are good reasons on either side. There's not a yes or a no. By the way, currency comes slabs as well as coins, as you see in the picture. One thing about slabs is do not buy the coin for what's on the slab. Do not buy it for the grade. Don't even buy it for the attribution. These companies, they're good, but they're not perfect, and they handle a lot of coins, and with the volume, they make mistakes. Sometimes that mistake can be your profit, sometimes the opposite, but if they say on the slab that it's a certain type of coin or a certain variety, that may not be right. If they say it's a certain grade, you may disagree with the grade, so don't buy the slab, buy the coin itself. And for those of you who obtain non-slab, i.e. raw colonials, well, how do I care for them? Well, I would read that there's material on that. If you buy that EAC grading that I talked about, I think it might be chapter 1, but they talk about how to care for coins. So I would definitely recommend that book. I brought a little show and tell. So you never want to hold, a colonial, any coin over a hard surface. I drop coins, we all drop coins. You always want to hold it over something that if the coin drops, no damage to the coin. So I would say a felt line tray you want to have. You want to be able to keep the coin. Most colonial collectors keep raw, i.e. non-slab coins in a little envelope. There are EAC folks that sell these. So you put the coin in a little envelope where it's safe and happy and warm. And you keep it in an envelope. You write what's important to you on the envelope, the attribution, the year, the type, anything that you find. Some people write the provenance of the coin on it, and you keep it in your box and keep it in the bank or wherever. I would say you should be brushing your coins every so often. So I recommend, this is a brush that's made in Eurotool, it's made in Germany. Sometimes you have EAC folks that sell these. I think it's camel hair, very, very soft brush. But I would say when you brush your coins, brush very, very lightly. Never aggressively brush your coins, just very, very lightly brush them. And if you want to try something else with acetone or some blue ribbon, some of these other products, very, very important to experiment with a low-grade coin that you wouldn't mind if you mess it up and it's all shiny and oops, I didn't mean to do that. Do it with something that you don't even care about. And then, if you progress to do something on your coins you do care about, you've already been experienced. So we talked about supplies a little bit. So I recommend they come in different sizes and different kinds, but some sort of felt lined tray that you always want to have the coin over, whether it's at your house or wherever you are looking at coins, you want to have it over something soft. You want to have, this is inexpensive, Bausch & Lomb, 5 magnifier, 5 times magnifier, or there's a variety of loops you can get. You definitely want to have, I talked about the brush, so you maybe want to get, I think, something, they're sold by many coin supply dealers, somehow to weigh the coin. For a lot of reasons, is it counterfeit or not, or for a lot of reasons, you want to know sometimes what's the weight of your colonial coin. So you want to get a little scale that can measure in grains and grams and so forth. So a word about security. Let's see. This is our last substantive slide. A word about security, and this would be any area of numismatics. Be really careful when you leave your house. First of all, careful in your house. I mean, I wouldn't have too many valuable coins. You want to have them in the bank at a safety deposit box. But when you travel, you have to think about every aspect of it. Where are my coins at all times? Never have a coin in a bag. Keep valuable things on your person. Think about hotel, motel security. Whenever you travel by car, never, ever leave valuables in the car. I don't care if you're going to leave just to pump your gas in your car, or just run in for fast food. Never leave valuables in your car. You'd be surprised at how fast someone could jimmy that thing open and get what they need and run. And I know examples of people losing coins in their cars. I think that just when you travel by car or by air, don't talk about coins with your friend. Don't let people around you know you have valuables. Just keep aware and keep all your valuables on your person. I think that if you become more advanced, I think that's a topic to get advice from fellow collectors. How you do it. What's your method of doing something? And I know in C4, I know colonial collectors were friendly and were always willing to share stuff like that. To finish off, a favorite. People love the Vermont landscape. I do, and many others do. So this is a little eye candy to finish up. My favorite. Here are some ways to find other collectors. Come to the C4 table here at this show. We have an annual convention here in Baltimore at the Fall Baltimore Show. We sometimes have a presence at other regional shows like the EAC show. Certainly there are websites that you want to look at, but you want to think about ways to meet other people that share your interests. That makes it a more fun and more enjoyable experience. And that's our presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right. What's your thoughts on taking advantage of the auction houses to go and do lot viewing? getting the chance to look at some great, coins.
So that's a great, no, I should add this to the presentation. That's a fantastic question. So, and I started doing this when I was a newbie, when I was just starting off with colonial coins. Going to lot viewing, even if it's a coin that you think may be beyond your budget and that you're not going to actually bid on, or if you do, you think you'll likely get outbid, sometimes it's a fantastic thing to just, just like it's great to look at steps of dealers inventory, it's great to do lot viewing. You can just take your time, you can take the coin, you can examine it, take your magnifier, study it, and it's a free education. So I would highly recommend that, especially if there's some coins in the sale that you don't encounter every day, and that you want to know, gee, what does it look like in the copper? I've seen it in the book, I've seen it on the website. What does this coin look like? That's a fantastic way to do that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, Jim,
Yep.
I very much appreciate your comments about seeing as many coins as you can, and I think even seeing fakes of colonial coins is a good thing to do. But a lot of people in my part of the country will come across something that they think is a legitimate colonial coin or piece of paper money, and it's not. It's an obvious fake.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the best way to, the best place to direct somebody like that to, to be sure that they're...
So it's very hard when you're starting off and you don't know too many of the fellow collectors. I mean, when I got started, and I had some questions, I remember at C4 Convention when I was just getting started, kind of figuring out who are the people that collect in the areas that I'm interested in. And many times I go up to people and say, well, what do you think about this? Either because I wasn't sure if it was real or not, or because I just wasn't sure at all whether or not this was a good coin to start off with versus be patient and wait for something else. I would also say, if you're not sure, try to ask someone. And if it doesn't have the right look, then I would say stay away from it. So it's hard to say that for someone who's new because they don't have the resources of other fellow collectors. I would say that the advice, look at as many coins as you can hold. So that's another reason to be patient. So if you see, let's say you're interested in Virginia coppers, right? Because I actually had the experience of buying a Virginia copper that turned out to be a fake, and I didn't know it until I asked the authority on it, Roger Moore, and I got the guy to give my money back. When you see a whole bunch of coins, even when you're starting out, you kind of get a feeling of how they come, how they look. And if something doesn't look right, then you want to stop and pause. So that's the advice I would give. I know it's hard for someone just starting off who doesn't have the people to ask. So for them, I would just say, be patient, see as many coins as you can, get a feeling of what these things are supposed to look like before you put any serious money down. Mike?
Well, I see a lot of fake Massachusetts on eBay, and I don't do it as much as I used to because I just did it too often. But I would direct people to Heritage or Stax sites and say this coin is a reproduction. And if you go here and look at a real one, you'll see that this is obvious. Some of them are a little bit not so obvious, but.
I mean, if I could, one huge piece of advice I think we can all give people who are just starting out with colonials is caveat emptor with eBay. Just be very, very careful. It's a kind of a wild west out there, and those of us who've been doing it for many years, we know the eBay, we know the dealers on eBay that we know and trust. But someone starting off, we have no idea.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the archives are a great resource that's available to.
That's a great. Yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah.
You should mention something about your new endeavor and show your enthusiasm.
Well, so I'll just finish off with just kind of an example of a living example of how you can find there's as many ways to collect as there are collectors. So there's no one. We talked before about how do I collect. There are kind of established ways to start off, but go with what interests you, because it's your hobby, it's your free time, this is for you. So for example, I started off collecting colonial currency, and I'm working my way to get one of each of the 13 colonies. But then I started noticing that some of these notes have been, they get so worn, they tear, and they've been sewn together, but contemporaneously in that time. You can see the threads very old, or they've been maybe backed. Maybe they've been, someone put it on a piece of a newspaper advertisement or an almanac or something. So I'm starting to collect that way. It's just, you see, the more you see, the more pathways that become available to you and open to you. And something strikes your fancy and you start to get curious. Well, that's the great thing about this hobby. It's all about your curiosity. If you're curious about it, explore that, scratch that itch, explore that curiosity, find out what's out there, and go with it. Anyway, thank you very much. Don't forget this is recorded and it'll be on the website, so folks, hopefully a lot more folks that are in this room can watch it. But thank you very much.